What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 22 of Mastercast. In this episode, I spoke to Tiaan van Zyl, a data analyst, and it's a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a very long time on the channel. We covered a lot of different subjects within data and how it fits into product development in the tech industry. And a big cloud that came out of our conversation was how POPI and the GDPR regulations are coming into the industry and how we should be aware of how it's going to impact our business. But we also spoke about just in general, how do products use data to improve the experience of users and customers, and just overall understanding of how data plugs in and shapes our businesses that we create. So please remember to subscribe to the channel. If you like this video, hit that like button. But enough from me. Enjoy the episode, and I hope to see you again. Cool. Tiaan, thank you for joining Mastercast. Really excited to talk data with you. I'm trying to do this for a while.
It's been some time.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool. I'm really excited. So obviously the podcast talks a lot about product and business and stuff like that. And it's quite funny. I know, we've worked together and stuff, and there were meetings where people said, we're a data company, and data is such a big part of, what we do, what we build, how we make decisions. So I'm so excited to get your insights so that people can also learn and understand. But before I rabble on any further, can you just introduce yourself and tell us your journey to where you became and how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. How long do you have? So Tiaan van Zyl, I am the analytics lead and a shareholder of Traffic Brand Analytics. My journey has come over the last 11, 12 years within analytics by accident. So I actually studied journalism, and that got me into the data space. It's kind of ironic because growing up, my dad and my brother my dad's a CA and so on, and they were all into the numbers, and that kind of bored me when I was growing up. So because I never saw the application of numbers, right? And
how ironic.
I know. And then in my second year of studying journalism, I got to a company that analyzed journalists and the way they wrote for car companies. And that got me into understanding what data can actually provide, because there we understood how well people wrote. What do they write about? What facets of the car, etc., do they write well about? And then we can inform our clients to say that invite these journalists, or they write about these things. But so there was then I understood that data plays a lot of roles from a PR point of view into product design point of view, to say that they tend to write about the car in such a way, etc. And that got me. I was there for about 2 or 3 years, and then I moved to Cape Town. That was all still in Joburg.
Okay.
Moved to Cape Town, and I started in a company called Traffic Brand back then. Pure digital marketing agency, and we were kind of a one-man team within the analytics space, kind of helping out the paid media team, making sure that they understand what they were doing from a data point of view. And as the years progressed, we got to understand that data has actually a valuable role to play, not only in what we were doing from a marketing point of view, but within business in itself. Yeah. So we're kind of investing more and more into it from resource and talent and from money point of view. And that's how the analytics company was born, Traffic Brand Analytics, kind of an original name, right? So now today we stand as our own company, and we help our clients with the digital analytics side and within business analytics. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. I mean, everyone talks about how the magazines died. You can't tell what page people flicked over and spend most of their time on. And then we moved into the digital space, and now we can track literally what everyone does. Bit scary, but at the same time, it's so useful for people that have marketing budgets and whatnot. I want to cut down quickly and just ask, what is, if you go to a client, what is the main critical thing that you say is important about knowing your data?
Look, data plays a vital role in any business. It's kind of the center focus, or should be the core focus for any company to understand what they're doing, right? I kind of always liken it to, imagine you've got a retail space, you've got a retail shop, and you've built your shop. So your typical kind of pick and pay layout, or your Woolies layout and so on. You walk in, and there's kind of shelves with products on it. You've got a checkout line, and you've got a transaction that needs to take place. it's good and all to have that, but to not understand it means that you can't progress and build and improve your experience for the customer that walks through your aisle. And I think that's what analytics for in our mind really encompasses, is that understanding of what users are experiencing when they do get to your platform. How easily is it for them to perform a specific action, or is there a specific product that they're looking at but they're not doing anything with it? So you see it kind of touches in that whole user experience up until that transaction. And when they do transact, you need to understand how to get that user to come do it again. So from a digital analytics point of view, is we kind of take it to the digital space. Like there's an in-store footprint, but liking that to digital space, it's the same kind of thinking. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting when you talk to me. I think of when you say pick and pay. I heard that they've even got I don't know, software that tracks footfall, and you can see which parts of the aisles through heat maps are getting the most people. You know, what's attracting the most people. You know, is it a special? Is it what products? And it's amazing just how it all filters through into everything now.
And it's interesting because what people think that technology, if you've got a website or an app, it's supposed to be so complicated, and understanding it is so complicated. In many facets, yes, but mostly no. It's the same idea. You've got an online shop that's got aisles, and it's got specific products there, and it's got specific services that it needs to give. We just need to put things in place to be able to understand whether that's working or not. It works the same for in-store. So just because technology is there doesn't mean it's complicated.
No, exactly. So, I mean, that makes me think, okay, so everyone is exposed to data, or whatever you want to call it, information. We got exposed to Excel, right? So if you could just give the listeners, besides Excel, what kind of tools are you using to help companies? And what languages, for example, could they be using? And for a starter, what would you recommend they get stuck into if they want to become?
Okay, so
a lot, sorry.
It's a really good question, because I think that it depends. So it depends on the kind of client that you're working on, and it depends on the kind of project they're working on. I think if we take it back to the kind of analyst that would start at a kind of an agency like us, is that we predominantly work with a lot of the Google products and within the digital analytics space, and then transitioning over to the business side of analytics, we go into things like Tableau and Power BI and so on. So I think that there are certain platforms that work really well in specific situations. For a junior, it's not necessarily to know Python and R and so on. I don't think that they need to know those languages to do their job properly. I think for a junior to do their job properly is to understand the process around analytics really well. It's to understand the fundamentals of getting information over without being too complicated. It's really that 80-20 rule, I guess. So it is that when 80% of the work that we tend to do, you don't need all these fancy languages. You don't need all these fancy tools to be able to do it. It's really when you want to understand that last 20% to push those boundaries, that you do need a language like Python or like R, or getting into more of the big data side of things, that I think a senior position then is required. So yeah, kind of the generic going off from Excel, something to like Google Analytics, the web analytics space, getting into your R, Python, and then getting into the machine learning side after that. So yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on, and you made me think, I actually made a note of it quickly, ML. I mean, so just quickly touch on, I don't want to freak people out, but just explain the movement towards ML and AI, machine learning and artificial intelligence. Are you involved in any of that?
As a company, we don't write any ML or kind of any of the AI, but we do work with companies and with clients that do it. So as part of our responsibility with that is to make sure that the data that goes into these algorithms are clean. It's something that they can use to be able to drive it forward. Look, it's kind of the nature of the beast, right? We get to deal with machine learning and AI on a daily basis. If you look at something very simple, like Google Analytics. Google Analytics is facing kind of a unprecedented time where third-party cookies and first-party data is becoming a little bit more important. Third-party cookies falling away, first-party cookies becoming more important, which is why they're moving to Google Analytics 4, where they're going to use machine learning to make up those shortfalls of where people don't want to be tracked, right? Because privacy is becoming so they're using machine learning to kind of fill those gaps.
Interesting.
So it has always been, but it's becoming more apparent that it's part of your everyday working scenario, whether you are aware of it or not. So yeah, machine learning is kind of, it's going to be a more important thing especially within the analytics space.
No, that's super interesting. I've forgotten about, I mean, isn't the POPI being released, the new POPI laws coming out?
Yeah.
We've got GDPR. I mean, do you help companies try and understand that? Because that's a can of worms, a big one.
It is. Luckily for us here in South Africa, POPI is a subset of GDPR with the focus on the end user. And that's how it should be, right? So if a user does not want you to track them, then don't force a user or do it in a way that they don't know that you are doing it or not. So POPI is a difficult one for companies that don't want to go down that route. Look, there's a lot of things that need to be in place. We actually busy almost finalized our own process. We're doing a gap analysis between what needs to be in place versus what you have in place, and filling that gap to make sure that you have the right procedures in place is important, and then making sure that you have the right procedures in place. Because with POPI, look, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give any advice on that. But what we can do is to say, this is the kind of data that we're working with from a third-party point of view and first-party data. What is it that needs to be in place for that data? It's not about giving advice from a legal point of view, because I think that they are better suited individuals for that. But yeah, because we work with the data, we've got a clear understanding of what is in place.
Cool. Yeah, let's not dive too much into that legal side of things. That's another world, right?
Yeah.
But I'd like to just chat more. I mean, my exposure as a product manager, diving into data, I love it. You dive in, you want to figure out something. So just explain kind of your process when a client says, we're trying to figure X, Y, Z out. Like, how do you unpack problems and understand this is what we need to try and figure out? Because from there, it's about trying to find a solution to something, right? Can you just unravel that process that you go through?
Sure. I think take one step back. I think we first need to understand what is important to the business. So usually when we start off with a client, we would say, we would put in a whole measurement plan together to say that what is important to the business and what do we need to put in place from a tracking point of view to be able to understand whether the business is growing or not, and what facets of the business is growing in certain directions. And is it growing in the direction that we deem it to be successful, right? So you've got your target, you've got your kind of KPIs. And then when a problem rises, such as the product might not be working as expected, it's understanding how that problem aligns with the broader goals of what the company should be focusing on. To say that if it's not working, the why is something we need to figure out, right? That's through the qualitative and quantitative analytics that we do. But it is to say that why do you feel it doesn't work? And it gives us some sort of a direction to go, because there's nothing more irritating than someone saying, find me an insight.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, that can be anything, right?
I can find you anyone.
Yeah, exactly. So to have a direction to say that we feel that it's not working, and create some sort of hypothesis to say that we feel that it's not working because of X, Y, and Z, and we test the data on those hypotheses. And to say that yes and no, it's not working because and we need context. So data is pure black and white, and putting context from our insights, from our experience, versus what the client can give from their business point of view, is coloring in that picture to say that it's not working for these various reasons, and it never stops at the answer. There's always more questions.
Opens a new door.
Yeah, exactly. So data really for us it's kind of a vessel for going down these various channels and furthering the product along, because nothing ever works 100%. So
yeah. Well, why I've wanted to chat to you for so long is because as a product manager, we generally need to understand the reasons for wanting to do something. So you've spoken now about hypothesis statements, hypothesis statements. How do you see your role within a product team, or any data, not necessarily maybe you, but in general? How do you see data fitting into a product team when diving into problems? Because obviously we have our UX, we have our designers, we've got your product managers, you've got your stakeholders. Where do you fit in all of that?
I think it comes back to that centralized view of where an analytics team should sit. In my opinion, an analytics team should sit right in the middle of an organization and spread outwards. And then it doesn't actually matter which team they work with. Data is data at the end of the day, and the people that you work alongside fill those gaps where the data can't. So if it's a product team and we say that let's say something very simple, something like website speed. So how fast there are certain individuals within specific teams that would be involved in that project. From a data point of view, we can understand how fast it loads and what makes it load fast versus not. And then it's up to the other individuals, such as graphic designers and potentially from a dev point of view, to say that these are the recommendations from their end based on the data, how we can improve the page speed times, and this got an impact. So there's definitely that central tendency from data is critical in any team, and that's what I do like about it, because it doesn't fit one team only. Analytics team, it should fit throughout
the company. So, I completely agree. And I think about my experience working at Sweep South. The guy that was doing the data there, I mean, he got touched by all sides. I mean, we can talk about the product team, we can talk about the marketing team, we can talk about the support team, we can talk about the accounting team. Then everyone's kind of trying to figure out how can they get their information out of all these different databases and different tools that they're using to get to some sort of answer or conclusion, because business decisions are made off that information, off that data.
Yeah.
Can you hear me still?
I can.
So can you kind of explain your date, like where do you find yourself working the most? Because I gave an example of the different facets. I mean, giving people information on their Zendesk tickets versus, SQL database. Where do you find yourself diving in the most, that you find is the most important? Do you have
No, there's no, it's a good question. And I think it comes, so I'll get back to your question now. And what we struggled with in the beginning of creating traffic analytics is that finding your niche within analytics, because like I said, it can fit into any facet of a business. We had to say that this is something this marketing and customer analytics is something that we want to focus on. Otherwise, we'll become kind of obsolete, right? We'll become jack of all trades as an agency as a whole. And I think by focusing on those niches, we kind of find the sweet spot for our data and the kind of clients that we work with. And yeah, I think that's, so my day-to-day is a good question, because there's the running the business side of things, having its own data, and then there's naturally the clients, and it depends on the client. Like we do, our clients range from kind of big retail clients to smaller psychology clients, as an example. And their level of involvement determines the level of kind of data that we work with and what kind of data we work with. So some clients we purely work on just Google Analytics, some clients we work with SQL databases, and some like Tableau as kind of a visualization tool. Most of my day is spent educating and cleaning data.
Clean data.
Those two things. Yeah,
that is quite... You can see by your reaction. Maybe we should explain clean data, because one of my friends that's also very into, he does SQL databases and stuff. He said to me, people design systems or websites, whatever it is, with data on the back of their minds, and only later dive in and realize, but hold on, look at this mess. Just explain that from your point of view.
I think that agree, and sometimes it feels like analytics is when a company is being designed or set up. The data side of things, or the analytics, is almost an afterthought or a tick box at the end after everything has been built and designed. And I think that's when you find a lot of databases and so on that aren't that useful or clean or easy to work with. It is when a company builds themselves with the input and output in mind, with their data, to say that how we build this product is to gather data in a responsible manner and to have an output that is easy and reliable so that we can get information out easy. Because what happens is that if you have the first scenario where they don't think about the output, is that you get a lot of information in because simply collecting information seems to be a thing. And then you have to spend 80% of your time cleaning it all up. And that you don't get to the information and the end result as fast as you can. But if customers or clients tend to build data in mind as an output for information, then you get to the endpoint as fast as possible. So it's the biggest lesson I've learned in terms of advice I can give is keep the output of data in mind when designing something like a database, a SQL database.
Yeah. So one of my managers used to say to me, try and understand when you're going to, let's say you're starting a project, think about what you're trying to achieve and that metric that you want to get to. As soon as you start thinking about that already, you can kind of say, okay, cool. Well, we're going to need to understand these users or this and that. And then, and that's what's nice about hypothesis statements, because at the end of an hypothesis statement, you say, we're going to know this by measuring this, we're going to do this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's beautiful. If we can, and I guess that's where your education comes in. You're constantly trying to pound that in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And but unfortunately, education comes through experience as well. And you only experience if you come across a company that hasn't done it properly in the past. So it's inevitable. I do think it's becoming a lot easier to get around the dirty data side of things. It's garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. But tools like Google Cloud's own prep tool or Tableau prep or so on, it makes it a lot easier. They've built in machine learning and AI into their prep tools to be able to come up with scenarios where certain things look alike. And then you just say accept, and it kind of cleans the data for you in certain ways. So it's becoming a lot easier. And I think companies like Tableau, Google, or Amazon, and so on are seeing the fact that it's not something that's going to change unless company culture changes around the world to think that way. So let's design products like these prep tools to be able to get around dirty data as a problem. But yeah, I think I agree with you where it says, let's start at the end and to say, what is it that we need? And then we say, what data do we need to be able to get to that conclusion?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset, right? It's not like we're going to dive into this problem and then see the result. Let's try and aim for a result and then understand how we're going to get that information out of that project, whatever it is.
And there's usually kind of a kickback on that, right? Because if you say, let's first try and understand, and we go and we say, let's create a framework to say, what is it that we need to have in place to be able to do this? It usually takes a little bit longer than going for the shotgun approach to say, just do it and let's see what we can get.
It makes you think about it before you go into it.
Yeah, but then we have to think. So
what do we have to think? But now, what about like people that talk about, because now obviously everyone wants data, because hey, look at all these, what we can do when we have all this data. And now it's easy to get, well, I don't know, you tell me, is it easy? It's easy to get these data warehouses, I think it's called, or these big data where you can just store all the metadata, and it's like, should we take this? Yeah, just put it in. So like, do you find that happening a lot, where people just give us all the data because we can learn from it? Isn't there like a line?
I think the line really comes now where the privacy like GDPR comes in. And I think it really touches on that, is that only track the things and collect the data that is completely necessary. So collecting everything, I think the times where you're collecting every single data point that you can, whether it's useful or not, I think that is kind of slowly fading away. And I think something like GDPR is not only good from a privacy point of view, but I think it makes companies think about the way that they do their architecture around data as well. To say that we know that we shouldn't just collect everything, because some of the data might be harmful to our customers and others might not be useful to us. So why collect it in the first place? So kind of finding that useful spot for information keeps your data kind of slim. And in Afrikaans way also slim, because then you kind of make use of the data to what it's designed for. Appropriately, yeah. And so I think it's kind of hounding on the GDPR side of things, or POPI, because I think that is the biggest shift in data we're seeing in a very long time, and it's now hitting South African shores from 1st of July. So and that's making companies, we as a data or analytics company, we had to change a lot of process in our end, the way we're thinking about data too. So companies that haven't focused on their own data and simply collecting data for the sake of it, that is where the biggest mind shift needs to happen. So, yeah.
Do you think the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica are to blame for all of this?
No, I think personal information has been misused for way before Facebook and Cambridge Analytica did it. I just think that highlighted a point. It was done on a mass scale by a company that is on global scale. So I just think that highlighted it. It's funny, like when we went through through our digital lawyer, and he made us understand what POPI is about and so on. And he said there are a lot of companies out there that can come back from a financial penalty of a privacy breach and so on. But there are very few companies that come back from a reputation damage by that. Cambridge Analytica didn't close down because they didn't have funds after it. They closed down because their reputation was damaged. No one wanted to work with them. So, and that's the biggest thing. The misuse of data, whether that is personal data or not, is the biggest threat to companies going forward. So, and that thinking of how do we use data stems all the way back from when you design a company or a product or whatever it is, to say that what data should we collect and what manner should be collected. And then from there, you say, how do we use this data to further our product along? Yeah,
that's such an interesting mindset to have when you're starting for startups out there is kind of saying, thinking about it from a data point of view originally, like off the bat, and then that's actually so cool. I really like that idea, like of letting your company sort of shape through your data. Sounds deep, but it makes a lot of sense.
Well, there's you can be philosophical about it as well. Data is not purely black and white. It's funny, I had this conversation with a client the other day where we discussed creativity within data and within development, and where does it play a role? And it really is in that 20% that we feel that it plays a big role. We say that the individual that really uses data creatively is the one that pushes the boundary slightly. It's how do we use this data a little bit out of the box is where creativity also comes in. So, and that is where, again, how you shape your data and what you do with the data to inform product design or logistics or your website design, whatever it might be. So you can see it, like it plays a role in everything. That's why I love it. Like that's why I love it and hate it, because it makes my day-to-day thinking difficult, because I'm like, what's this data for? What is the reasoning for this data? And then that's what made our decision to go into marketing, customer analytics. So why that decision was made is because then we focus on one thing, and we focus on one thing really well, other than going, because if you had to be the jack of all trades, the company would kind of organically dissolve over time, because it's getting stretched over all your client's whole company, which kind of makes it a little bit more difficult to operate.
Gets hectic. So can you give an example of where data was really used in a good way. Like, I don't know, we've been going on about POPI and stuff like that. So for me, I always think of pain points. You know, when you look at, a system, an app or something, and you can see where people are struggling and then identifying where it is and then trying to figure out how to make their experience better. Can you relate to it? Do you have another kind of story for us?
That's a difficult one. It shouldn't be, right? Because
No.
in my team, I always say we don't brag enough about the wins that we have. It almost comes naturally within the analytics space to say that we made this improvement based on data, and we go on to the next thing and we try and solve the next thing and next thing. So it kind of falls into the archives, and that's why I'm struggling to come up with one. There was one UX with A/B testing that I'll always remember. It was in my first 2 or 3 years at Traffic Brand, and we had a client, a gaming client, where they wanted to understand why are users dropping off on their registration form, and we couldn't figure it out. And what we did was we ran a qualitative analysis, and we kind of surveyed people, and we said that, why is it that this is happening? And they said that there's this promotion tab or a promotion field, code field that's there, and they don't know why it's there. So what we figured out was people that didn't have the code when they wanted to register were going away looking for the code before they wanted to go register, because they feel
so they left the page,
less valued, left it, and potentially never came back. So by putting that to the back of after registration, we saw a massive increase in registration rate. So it's a small thing, but at the end of the day, that has a massive impact on the bottom line, because now your retention strategy kicks in after you've got someone on board.
There we go.
So yeah.
Wow, retention strategy. That feels like a whole new podcast on its own.
Yeah, look, being in customer and marketing analytics, the strategy part of what we do is actually a massive element.
Yes.
Because all this data we sit with and the experience within digital marketing, it's a natural progression towards what the next step should be and what that strategy should be.
100%.
And we are a premium partner with Google, as an example. So we would closely work with them with putting big strategy together for YouTube, as an example. So so those things are great, because we come, like my team, we come from an analytics point of view, and then the marketing team comes from what is possible from their point of view. And we put something together that kind of has an outcome on data. So we always say, what are the targets that we need to achieve with something like this? And the strategy is then based not on simply, let's put a TV advert on YouTube and let's see how many people see it, and there we go, that's great. It's not like that. So I think marketing is becoming a lot more data driven as well.
No, definitely. Yeah. That's the thing. That's why I said earlier, you've got data points all over the business, all over the company, and you can touch it everywhere. I feel like we can go on for ages, but I think I just want to finish by saying, one of the big things as a product manager is the client will spend lots of money building something. That retention is so bloody important, because you can build the software, but if no one uses it, or if no one sees the value in it, and what's the point? And you need your data to see if people are getting value out of it, and can you scale it? I mean, it's another subject on its own. So that was great. So to always finish, I ask all my guests to recommend a book. What book have you read that you that helps, or that can help them? You're looking, you're searching.
I'll show you.
Measure what matters.
I'll recommend The New IQ.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the wrong way around.
No, it's perfect.
It's really good. I think it's a way of thinking about what IQ was designed to be, the understanding of IQ, versus what it should be now. And it's a lot more to IQ than what it's been perceived to be, because I think kids growing up, it's got this thing about your IQ is high or low, or you are average or above average. Yeah. And I think there's more to intelligence than that. It's the application of intelligence and the application of what you learn that's got a lot more value than simply just understanding something. So
yeah, see, That was awesome.
It's a really good book.
It looks like a really good book. Looks like a beast.
It's written by Tracy and Ross Alloway.
Okay.
At the bottom.
No, we'll put a link in for the people. But that's a great one. Thank you very much. Well, Tiaan, I think we could carry on, but let's not and say we did.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining. Maybe we'll see you again. We can dive into some more of the metrics and stuff that you're working on. But thanks for your time. It's been awesome.
It's been great. Thanks, Bobby.
Cool. Thanks very much. Cheers, everyone.